Hello and welcome back to my channel. Today I'll be talking about another compound that you'll definitely have come across in your daily life. I'll be talking about hand sanitizer or hand gel. And it's very important in these times, so I've made this video to show you what is in hand sanitizer or hand gel and how the atoms in it bond together. Hand gel is made from ethyl alcohol or ethanol. Fragrance, I'll be talking specifically about benzene, which is a type of fragrance, and the final two things that make up hand sanitizer are glycerol and of course water. So let's talk about hand sanitizer and how it actually works. So the key ingredient in most hand sanitizers is alcohol. Alcohols are organic molecules made of carbon, oxygen and hydrogen. Ethanol is the chemical most people are associating when they say alcohol. Ethanol is a common disinfectant because it's highly soluble in water, meaning it dissolves in water very easily. And alcohols have been known to kill germs by denaturing the protective outer proteins of microbes and dissolving their membranes. And denaturation involves the breaking of many of the weak links or bonds, and a microbe is basically a bacteria creating a disease. And so even though hand sanitizers are not always as strong as soap, they are a good substitute to bring with you when you're on the go. So let's talk about the first compound. First, we'll be talking about ethyl alcohol or ethanol. And ethanol is important in industrial chemicals, and it's used as a solvent in the combination of other organic chemicals. And this is the chemical structure of it, and as I've said earlier in the video, alcohols are made up of carbon, oxygen and hydrogen atoms. So a hydrogen atom in the white, the oxygen atoms in the red and the carbon atoms in the black. And so the chemical formula for ethanol is C2H5OH. And if you're thinking, well, why don't we just say C5H6O? It's because there are 6 hydrogen atoms, and yes, there are 6 hydrogen atoms, but in this case, the oxygen and the hydrogen atom here are bonded together, meaning that there is a molecule in the compound. So this oxygen and this hydrogen, these two, are the molecules in this compound. And I've talked about this and how you substitute it in a chemical equation in a previous video, so you can go and check that out. And if you want to know more about how to deal with them in chemical equations. So let's look at how they bond. First, the carbon. And as I've talked about in the previous video, then in the last video I did, carbon can have 4 bonds. So he has 1 bond to this oxygen atom here, 2 separate bonds to 2 different hydrogen atoms here, these two, and it has a bond to a carbon atom. And so let me explain why it has 4 bonds. So if you look on the periodic table, you can see that carbon is in group 4, meaning it's 4 groups away from the final group, group 6, or the noble gases, which is the final group. And what I'm about to explain, I've said in another video, but I will be repeating it again. So as carbon is in group 4, the carbon atom has 4 electrons in its valence shell, or the outer shell. And so this means that it wants to fill its valence shell, so it needs 4 more bonds. And to do that, the second valence shell can hold 8 electrons. And so that's why it has 4 bonds, because it wants to gain 4 extra bonds. And this goes with all the other atoms. So oxygen is in group 6, so it wants 2 more bonds to fill its valence shell, the final shell, the outer shell. And so it has 1 bond and another bond. And so hydrogen only has 1 electron in its valence shell, meaning it only needs 1 more electron to fill its valence shell, and the first shell only holds 2 and not 8. So this is why you'll see that hydrogen only had 1 bond. So this hydrogen atom had 1 bond to the oxygen atom, or for example, this hydrogen atom only had 1 bond to this carbon atom. So this is the next chemical, benzene. And so benzene is a chemical that is colourless or a light yellow liquid, and it has a sweet odour and is highly flammable. So benzene evaporates into the air very quickly, so this explains when you rub your hands together after putting hand gel in your hands dry very quickly instead of still being quite wet. And so the chemical formula for benzene is C6H6. And that sounds very simple, but the structure of it is very interesting. And as I said earlier, the carbon atom has 4 valence electrons, so 4 bonds. And because of this unique configuration, it is easier for the carbon atoms to share 4 electrons with 4 other atoms and other carbon atoms. And so this means that it can form long chains or rings with other carbon atoms. And in fact, a carbon atom can bond with another carbon atom 2 or 3 times to make a double and triple covalent bond between 2 carbon atoms. So long chains of carbon atoms with double and triple bonds are quite common in biology or organic chemistry. And also you may have heard of carbon fibre and how tough it is, and it's used for aerospace and marine transport, and the reason for this and how it's so tough is because of the structure of the carbon atoms it's made from. All the carbon atoms are formed in rings. So the rings look like this if you take away the hydrogen atoms, and if you have many of these rings next to each other, they're all bonded. Let's look at this single ring. So this carbon atom has a double bond to this carbon atom, 2 bonds going to here, has another bond going to this carbon atom, adds another bond to a hydrogen atom. And all of these carbon atoms have a double bond and a single bond to another carbon atom, which helps them form, once again, as I said earlier, rings or long chains. So the next compound is glycerol. And the glycerol is a simple polyol compound. It's colourless, odourless, it's a viscous liquid that is sweet tasting and non-toxic. And a polyol compound is an organic compound containing multiple hydroxyl groups. And basically a hydroxyl group consists of 1 hydrogen and 1 oxygen atom bonded together. And hydroxyl groups are often found in alcohols and acids. So the chemical formula for glycerol is C3H8O3. And so let's go through it. So as I already said, the carbon atom only has 4 bonds because it is in the 4th group of the periodic table. So let's take this carbon atom for example. It has 1 bond to this carbon atom, 1 bond to this oxygen atom, 2 separate bonds to 2 different hydrogen atoms. Next we can look at an example of an oxygen atom. So this oxygen atom has 1 bond to a hydrogen atom, 1 bond to a carbon atom, so it has 2 bonds. And so let's look at hydrogen next. So this hydrogen atom had 1 bond and only 1 bond to this carbon atom, and let's take this hydrogen atom and has 1 bond and only 1 bond to this oxygen atom. And so the final compound is water, and it's quite a nice simple compound to finish off with. And so the chemical formula for water is H2O, and I'm sure you are very familiar with the chemical formula. And so the 2 hydrogen atoms here, the H2, both bond to the same oxygen atom, meaning both of these hydrogen atoms have filled out their valence shell, and this oxygen atom has 2 bonds to the hydrogen atoms, meaning it has also filled out its valence shell because it only needs 2 bonds. And so that is the chemical structure of water. And so those are all the compounds that make up hand gel or hand sanitizer.